Good morning. My name is Just Ibe, and I'm going to be sharing my perspective on AFCFTA, the future of intra-Africa and international trade with Africa. I know that majority of us already know what the pros of the AFCFTA is for Africa and for Africans, but today I want to expose some of the disadvantages, or cons as we would like to call it. But because I want us to begin to think about putting systems and structures in place to be able to mitigate these cons, as it were. And one of the first things I want us to talk about is talk about it in terms of, the cadence of trading. So nations trade with each other, so governments, right? And then we also talk about the very big companies, the multinationals, the extractive industry, like we may like to call them. And then we now also want to talk about the SMEs. Now, the SMEs, to a very large extent on the African continent, drive 50% of our continent's GDP. What this goes to say is that if we concentrate on intra-African trading and international trading with our SMEs, there is a very quick likelihood of increasing that percentage from 50 to maybe 60 or 70 within the next 5 years if implementation is properly, paid attention to. And here is why I think implementation may just be a flaw. So if you look at what's going on with the AFCFTA right now, in terms of the mindset of the average African does not necessarily see the other African as a potential trade partner. And I'm talking about what's obtainable in the market today. So an SME or a business owner who wants to buy products and services, the least person on his mind to check if they do have those products and services is the fellow African. And correct me if you want to, you find that the first thing they want to do is go to China before they even think about the other African country. Yet, there is the AFCFTA that is supposed to help us trade within ourselves very easily. But the mindset of the average African is not wired to see the fellow African as a trade partner. Instead, we are wired to see ourselves as competitors. So while we have so many systems and structures in place to allow us trade, maybe platforms that are being set up by different private individuals, who is addressing the mindset that allows the fellow African see the other person as a potential collaborator, a potential business owner, rather than a competitor? And you see, these are the things that are not talked about publicly. They are not even talked about in meetings because we don't know that that is the major problem we have, that is the impediment to the implementation of the AFCFTA. So, what do we need to really begin to do as Africans if we want the AFCFTA to work amongst Africans, especially at the SME or the entrepreneurs level? What we now need to begin to do is start to pay attention to how we think about each other. I'll give you a very typical example. A couple months ago, we wanted to buy a particular, solar product, and that particular solar product was not available, in China, because at the time I think they had, I think, a holiday or something. And then we started to scout different African countries to see if we could find that specific, spec of solar product. And we got a particular one in Kenya. And guess what? The amount of money we're supposed to buy it from in Kenya was double the price we're going to buy it from in China. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is, if it was going to get to Nigeria from Kenya, we're going to spend almost twice the amount of money we're importing it from China. So what then is the meaning of intra-African trade if the non-trade barriers are actually not working? It's easy for us to talk about how it is at certain level. And I know some people are going to say, well, Justy Bay, this is new. We just started. So as new as it is, the implementation phases should show that we are tackling this one thing one after the other. And we can see the projective milestones that both the government, the AFCFTA Secretariat, the African Union are taking to be able to make sure these things are implemented. What we have going on across the continent of Africa right now is a lot of education, it's a lot of awareness on what the AFCFTA is, which I truly applaud. That's great information, or that's great communication on getting the African, aware that we can actually trade amongst ourselves. But while we are doing that, we must incorporate a very, very critical element, and that's the mindset that allows the average African see the other person as a potential collaborator, as a potential business partner, as opposed to seeing them as a competition. So that indicator of, if I was to trade with somebody, would I think of an African first before I think about the other person? Now, the other thing I want us to really address here is, as much as we talk about international trade in the AFCFTA, that means that we're going to make our markets very easily accessible to international markets, for goods and services. One of the things I want us to pay attention here is, if we don't put regulations in place, the foreign products and services will come into the African space, and for lack of a better word, the competition will become so stiff for the African that manufacturers will begin to suffer. And that is, quote and unquote, the recipe for setting us back infrastructure-wise. We want to grow infrastructures. We want to build a lot of systems to make the African continent grow and the African economy grow. And so if we're doing international trade where we have gathered our people in the regional trading hub to say, international markets, come trade with us, we must create systems and structures in place that allow us make sure that the international products and services do not come to push our own products and services out of the market. Take a very critical look at what's going on in China. You can't enter into China with your product and services. There's just no space, because they have made sure that their own product and services have dominated their market. So you as a foreigner cannot come in and push their own business owners out of market. While it's arguable that Africa is still growing and we haven't gotten there yet, we must, at this implementation stage of the AFCFTA, put systems and structures in place to make sure that our local struggling manufacturers get value for their money if they are going to take part of this trade agreement. So that we're not opening up our hubs for so many people to come in, and then the local manufacturers do not even, their products become less competitive. And I know that there's a place where we have to put standards in place so that the average African manufacturer can meet specific standards so that, they can be very competitive. Yes, that should be in place. But what I have stated earlier is something that the AFCFTA Secretariat Chairman, the AU, and every other person in charge of the implementation of the AFCFTA must pay very close attention to. Now more than ever, the African continent must grow, and in growing the African continent, we must make sure that in our bid to want to trade both intra and internationally, we don't do things that will stifle the growth of our economy. Having said that, the final thing I want us to highlight here as we round up this particular discourse is, the future of Africa depends on every single African, whether you're in Africa or you're in the diaspora. Our goal is to begin to rally troops, rally Africans who truly believe that this is the generation of Africa. And when I say generation of Africa, it means that this is the time where Africa needs to truly shine. And in Africa shining, it means that you and I are going to have to put on our shoes to say, what part of this work am I going to hold? What part of this implementation am I going to see through or follow through? And what part of the systems and structures am I going to collaborate with both the AU, the AFCFTA to make sure that overall what we want to achieve in Africa is truly achieved? Let's not leave it only for those who are supposedly the implementation partners or bodies to monitor. We, the private sectors, we as individuals must get involved so that we can hold people accountable to deliver what they say they're going to deliver for Africa. Africa is yours, is mine. And it means that you and I must be actively involved in making sure this, our Africa, works. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.